So, what exactly happens when a completely frozen ocean just melts? Imagine the Earth's most impenetrable frozen frontier suddenly thawing out. We're talking about an entirely new ocean opening up right at the very top of the world. What does that actually do to global power dynamics? Well, let's get into it. Right now, that ice is literally shattering and it's revealing a bustling new world. Look at those glowing blue pathways carving straight through the fractured ice. For centuries, this whole region was basically a locked vault. Nobody was getting through. But with global temperatures rising at unprecedented rates, that permanent sea ice is melting fast, and it's allowing massive fleets of commercial ships to push into waters that were honestly completely inaccessible just a generation ago. Welcome to our explainer on thawing frontiers, the geopolitics of the polar north. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how this massive physical transformation is completely reshaping global trade, unlocking vast hidden resources, and maybe most importantly, triggering a whole new era of military strategy. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Great Thaw, move into new global trade routes, look at the race for resources, then the Arctic arms race, and finally wrap up with the future polar landscape. All right, let's dive into Section 1, the Great Thaw. The Arctic is fundamentally transforming from an impenetrable frozen frontier into a wide-open, accessible ocean. I mean, think about it. This used to be just a huge blank space on the map for global commerce. Harsh weather kept everyone out. But with the ice retreating so much faster than our predictive models even anticipated, we're literally watching this space turn into one of Earth's most strategically crucial maritime zones right before our eyes. Which brings us to Section 2, New Global Trade Routes. Check out that bright blue line of the northern sea route hugging the Russian coastline. Now, compare that to your traditional maritime choke points, like the Suez Canal you can see down in the corner. By cutting straight across the polar north, shipping vessels can completely bypass those old, congested routes. We're talking about shaving thousands of nautical miles off a trip. Sometimes that cuts travel time between Europe and Asia by up to 40%. It's a total game changer. And this translates into a massive, massive strategic advantage. We're looking at shorter distances, significantly lower fuel costs, much faster transit times, and, crucially, way less reliance on global bottlenecks. If you're an international shipping company, the financial incentives to use these new transpolar routes are just absolutely staggering. Moving right along to Section 3, the race for resources. But the story definitely doesn't end at the surface. The ultimate prize here isn't just on the water. It's actually beneath it. These newly accessible shipping lanes, they're really just the pathway to something much more permanent and arguably way more valuable, waiting right below. Get this. Beneath the Arctic seabed lies an estimated 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and a whopping 30% of its undiscovered natural gas, not to mention a treasure trove of highly sought-after rare earth minerals. You've got drilling platforms anchored straight to the ice, energy pipelines snaking all across the ocean floor. As access improves, the drive to tap into this massive hidden wealth is just pouring fuel on global strategic competition. So who's actually sitting at this geopolitical chessboard? On one side, we have the core Arctic states, Russia, the US, Canada, Norway, and Denmark, who all maintain direct territorial claims. But take a look at that bottom row. Suddenly, nations that are nowhere near the snow are showing a really deep vested interest. They're pouring heavy investment into regional scientific research and infrastructure. Basically, as the ice clears, everybody wants a seat at the frozen table. Next up is Section 4, the Arctic arms race. History tells us that wherever valuable trade routes and vital resources emerge, intense military competition is bound to follow. And we are seeing rapid militarization across air, sea, and ice right now. You have Russian and US flags flying over heavily fortified ice spaces surrounded by active fighter jets, massive early warning radar installations, and submarines patrolling silently beneath the fractured ice. In practice, this looks like a sweeping expansion of national security operations. We're talking about advanced submarine operations mapping the deep, expansive early warning radar networks scanning the skies, and incredibly complex missile defense systems. The Arctic has rapidly evolved from a forgotten wasteland into a high-stakes frontline for global strategic deterrence. And it's a very delicate dynamic. Russia is significantly expanding its footprint up there, revitalizing old Soviet-era airfields, radar systems, and building up Arctic-capable forces.
In direct response to that, NATO member nations are concurrently stepping up their own Arctic exercises, expanding surveillance and boosting operational readiness. It's a classic rapid-fire action and response cycle just playing out in the snow.
Which leads us to our final section, the future polar landscape.
Now, despite the melt, operating in this region isn't just about showing up. It requires some immense, highly specialized capabilities. Navigating treacherous ice still demands custom-built vessels. Surviving those freezing temperatures requires incredibly resilient infrastructure. And because traditional communication often fails at these extreme latitudes, robust satellite networks are absolutely mandatory. Throw in autonomous tech to handle the remote workloads and massively enhanced search and rescue operations, and you start to get the picture. The extreme environment still ruthlessly dictates the rules of engagement.
And we really have to remember that this region isn't just a giant chessboard. It is a highly fragile, living ecosystem. Navigating these extreme conditions is a daily threat. There is an absolute necessity to protect indigenous communities whose entire ways of life are tethered to this changing ice. The world has to figure out how to balance massive economic opportunity with some pretty devastating environmental realities. It's an incredibly dangerous tightrope to walk.
If there's one core takeaway you should remember from this explainer, it's summarized perfectly right here. Where access increases, geopolitical competition often follows. We've watched this domino effect play out in real time today, from the initial trigger of climate change straight through to massive maritime booms and the inevitable military escalation. So, that leaves us with a really provocative question to close on. Will the Arctic be a model of international cooperation, or is it destined to be the world's next great battleground? How nations choose to navigate this rapidly changing landscape is going to shape global trade, energy security, and international relations for decades to come. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll leave you to ponder that.